NetGain Networking Encouragement Training, helping Snow Landscape and all small businesses hire, train, retain, and engage the best teams to build those win-win workplaces. Are you looking to thrive at work? Here is your NetGain. Welcome to NetGain. This is Networking Encouragement Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwar with Jack of All People Trades. We exist to help Snow Landscape and all small businesses hire, train, and retain and engage the best team so that you can have that win-win workplace. And what the win-win workplace is, it's a workplace where employees work in and know their strengths and are engaged, going that extra mile. And then because of that, company goals are exceeded and people stay with you long term. So it's a win for the employee and a win for the company. What I'm going to do, I'm going to be doing several episodes of NetGain that actually are inspired by feedback. So if anybody's seen me post on places like Snowplow Mafia, Snow Jobs Nation online, different landscape groups, even the NetGain page, or if I've reached out to you for feedback personally, I really am not just doing that just for the sake of promoting the podcast, though I obviously do hope that you take a listen. But I've actually been doing that to really kind of glean some firsthand challenges from the people side and then see what I can speak to. So by no means does what I share today the all-inclusive answer, but I hope this can get y'all closer on some things. So a couple things I want to speak to. Number one is going to be hiring in snow landscape and facility services. So has anybody ever uttered the phrase, we just are struggling to find good people. We can't get good people. We can't hire good people. We can't hire enough people. So first of all, I'm going to say I empathize, and that's definitely real. So I'm going to talk about my experience. So for those who don't know or haven't listened to prior episodes, I've been a recruiter throughout most of my career, including in snow and ice on landscape, specifically snow and ice. I recruited for a self-performing operation that grew from 750,000 in revenue to almost 3.5 million over a 2 to 3 year period. So I've definitely had that experience of hiring in a way that can grow. And I've also dispatched and responsible for project managing. So I do know the firsthand challenges of it. So that's definitely coming from experience. But then I've also taught and recruited in other industries as well and seen hiring challenges. So even if you're not in that industry, this can still speak. But this one's definitely going to be for my snow landscape and facility services people. But even if you're in another small business, I trust you can probably glean something from this that can help. So a couple challenges that really come in with hiring, especially in the snow or any kind of seasonal business, especially snow, where you do need a abundance of people for weather that may or may not hit. But if it does hit, then it hits big. You do need people. Number one, you have to acknowledge there are variables. So you are playing with the deck. I hate saying the deck stacked against you, but you have to acknowledge challenges. You have things like that you can't control. Number one, the nature of the work. It's varied hours, if any hours. There's not guarantees. So that's number one. With variation, there's needs to pivot. It's work that takes adaptability and grit. You might start on a storm that you think is all, dry, fluffy snow. And then, all of a sudden it switches over to rain. Now you've got ice going into that snow, and you have a whole nother thing that you're dealing with after your team's already tired. There's been challenges with immigration enforcement, which I'm going to talk about. And then one thing that's been talked about that was actually brought up is the skip generation. So that, in the trades, I've heard different stats for like every 5 retirees, we have 2 people coming in. Some have said it's for every 10 retirees, we have 2 people coming in. So I'm going to talk about solutions to those. And by no means is this exhaustive. And by no means are some of these quick fixes. So I would say the number one encouragement, I would say from the people side, is while you have to worry about today, obviously, to get the work done, you have to at certain times, especially in between seasons or when there's lulls. So like if you're a snow only company or snow primary that's getting away from once you get through like landscape sales, you have to take time in the summer to strategically plan and play the long game. And you have to put initiatives in place that play the long game. It can't just be scramble when I need people. If you're only turning up your hiring efforts when you need people, you're already behind the 8 ball. You need to start building those pools of potential candidates before you ever need them. And I'm going to talk about some practical ways to do that. But number one, a couple things you can do with the nature of the work. Yes, it is varied hours. There's not guarantees. Couple ways you can combat that is number one, if you are doing snow, especially self-performed snow at any kind of scale, I highly suggest you have some kind of spring operations, even if it's just to break even or make a little bit of a profit so that you can keep your people on board, because you want to keep your best people. You want to keep your site leads, your best operators on your payroll, on your benefits year round, because employees need, they need pay that's going to be consistent. They need benefits. So they either need that, consistent 40 hours a week that you're going to pay no matter what, plus overtime, or they need they need those benefits. So definitely budget and sell in a way that you can keep those jobs, have some year round work, because you've got to keep some people. If you're just doing snow and scrambling, hoping you get enough people every year, that's going to be tough. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm sure somebody's out there saying how they've done it, but you've got to at least keep a core year round. So, number two, with the variation, is communication is key. And one thing that I've seen some companies fall short on is they're obviously staffing the field because that's where the work's done. But then the office staff is kind of, well, they bill, they answer the phones. But you really do need some strategic people that aren't in the storm, not just talking to your customers, but also talking to your seasonal staff, providing those updates, providing updates every week. One thing I highly suggest is have somebody during the season, starting in, say, depending on when your weather starts. If your weather starts in September, maybe start in August. If your weather starts in November, December, start this in early October. Keep up your team's seasonal availability every week. There's software that can help you with that. There's mass texting. But even if you're just old school, sending out text blasts, calling everybody, saying, hey, is there any changes? And make people answer you. Yes, it's going to seem redundant. Yes, it might seem like overkill, but you want to have that consistent communication. And one thing you can do with that communication, so you're not just, quote, bugging people for availability, even though you need it because you need to be ready to go at any drop of a dime. Drop in there some training tips, drop in some videos where you show, hey, this is how the work in the field gets done, or this is what you need to think about with the wet snow. Drop in some different stats. Use that as an opportunity to educate your team, because some of these people, they might only do snow in the winter. It might be their first winter doing snow. They're not as familiar with it as you. So definitely use that consistent communication. Immigration enforcement, here's one I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on, because I'm certainly not, but I'll shout out Natalie Mualem. So that's Mualem, and Mualem Firm. I would definitely look them up. They are immigration attorneys that specialize with snow landscape companies, H-1B, H-2B visas. So definitely hit them up and, really work through your situation. I think if you're especially invested in a heavily, Hispanic workforce, immigrant workforce, and want to make sure you're legal and that everything is above board, they can definitely help you on that. And it's really worth the money. And then the skip generation. I mean, here's the thing right now. We can't undo what we've done, but I think we need to be intentional about going forward, getting in front of, high schools, even junior highs, inviting students out on field trips to see equipment, to play with equipment, get in touch with VOTEC schools, get in touch with heavy equipment operating programs, really get in touch with anywhere that we can reach the younger generation, bring them out, make it interactive, make it fun. Maybe do some games where you have, like, one thing I thought of that could be fun is have one of your operators run a machine with an attachment and have kids try to see, like, how many balls they can throw in the machine, and can the machine catch the ball as they're throwing it. Just something fun. But that's what that does, is that puts it in their path. In addition to that, you obviously do some education. You talk about what you do, how necessary it is, what all goes into it, what opportunities are available, not only on the field side, but how even different field people have shifted to roles like operations manager, account manager, maybe even own their own business, so that you put it in their heads early. And this is a long game, y'all. This is not something that you're going to do this and this is going to change your workforce for next year. This is something that we got to invest, if you're serious about building a future, to really build a future. And one organization I want to shout out is Bring Back the Trades. So definitely look them up. They're definitely a good place to really invest. And, even to, reach out to your customers and your property managers, and, let them know you're doing this kind of stuff. So that's a couple things that you can do to definitely help with some of that. And then another thing too is cross training and career paths can really help. So when you're training operators, don't just train them. I know it's tempting to say, well, they're going to be on that site. I just need to train them to run a loader on this site. Yes, you do. And that's one thing you're going to need it for, but you need more than that. Just training them for the loader on that site, train them on different machines, train people on different sites. In off storm hours, I would definitely suggest putting budget aside and, offering some, cross training opportunities where you pay one of your staff members or one of your seasonal people who's really good to train people on other sites. And, make it that they have to show up on their own dime, but say, hey, if you want to, whether you're green, whether you want more hours, if you're serious about this, show up and train, and it can be something good for you. So, just looking through some more feedback here. Again, all of this that I'm talking about is based off your feedback. So, some of this I hope will help. One thing some people say, with pre qualifications, people pre qualify like champions and then deliver very different from reality. That's a reality. There's some people that can interview very well, that can show up, can run a machine in an interview, look really good, and then they ghost you. They never show up again, or they don't communicate. So, what I suggest for that, especially with a seasonal operation, is again, have a consistent plan for not only how you hire, but how you onboard, how you consistently communicate throughout the season to make sure they stay in touch, and then ultimately how you follow up if things don't work out the way that they're supposed to. So, let's run this example for snow. So, when you're hiring seasonal operators, obviously you put your ads out there, you're reaching out to passive candidates. I'm not going to go through everything, but when you're interviewing, what I did and not what I'd suggest is start with having somebody do phone interviews where you do basic questions about what equipment have they run, what jobs have they worked on, have they done snow before, how do they work safely? And if you feel they answer those questions well, then you bring them on site for an actual interview where they have to run the equipment. And what I'd suggest is setting up a checklist to make sure that they actually can run your equipment. They can attach and detach a pusher or attachment. They can maneuver with it. They can back up safely. That way you can see it, and someone who knows the equipment can see it and can see, is this somebody who's skilled enough to be on a site where they're unsupervised? Is this somebody who they're a little greener? Maybe they could be on a site doing drive lanes where it's more open, but we don't want them doing the detail work. Or is this somebody we're not going to? So what this does, you might be saying that's a lot of work for just hiring seasonal people. But what it does, in addition to assessing them at each step, it also shows one of the biggest things for seasonal snow is, can people continue to communicate throughout the season and continue to show up? So if somebody can't communicate, if they say they're going to be on a phone interview and they ghost, if they say that they're going to come in person to interview with you and they ghost you and don't, are they going to show up at 2 a.m. when it's snowing, or, without telling you? I would say probably not. I'll share this funny story. I always share this one. Poor kid. He became a teaching example to me, but this is what you get for not for ghosting. So don't ghost me. You'll become a teaching example. So when I was interviewing for seasonal work, I'd interviewed an operator, sounded really good on the field, had a good resume, had done a lot of dirt work, rock work. And I'd scheduled him to come for an in-person interview. He said, yeah, I'm off Friday. I can come in, run the machine, no problem. So I scheduled it, and my site lead called me and he said, hey, this kid no-showed. So, I always, and this is another thing I'd suggest, if people no-show an interview, I would call them back. Don't be aggressive, be professional, but just ask them what happened. Number one, check to make sure they're okay, because something could have happened legitimately. And if not, if they say they forgot or whatever, convey the expectation that, we expect that you're communicated with and that you should be proactive. So this kid had called, I called him, he picked the phone up. Oh, hey, I was like, yeah, I was like, this is Evan Tashwire. You were scheduled for a 10 a.m. interview. He's like, oh yeah, I got called into work. And I kind of was a little bit annoyed. And I jokingly said, I'm like, did your phone stop working after that? He's like, no, why? I'm like, because you could have called me and told me you got called into work. We could have rescheduled this. Oh, yeah, I could have done that. But if people aren't thinking that far ahead, that's probably not a good sign. Now, if somebody's contrite and they're like, you know what, I dropped the ball, I do want to reschedule, and they're serious the rest of the season, that's okay. I'm all for giving grace, especially if the grace is followed by changed behavior. But if it's consistent negative behavior, that's a place where you have to professionally cut ties. So anyway, back to the process that I suggest for helping people who qualify well but don't show up is have that consistent touch base process for snow. So phone interview, in-person interview. If they run the equipment well, do your background check, your drug screen. They pass that in a timely manner. Then we had on-site training where we would go through a slide deck, how to run the machine safely, walk through examples of hours of services, snow basics, and then they'd also have a walkthrough. So these were paid trainings right here, the on-site training and the site walkthrough. These were both paid trainings. But again, that shows that they're going to show up, that they're going to, if they can't for whatever reason, they'll proactively let you know. Because if people start proactively, you're not proactively telling you at that point, they're probably not going to be good for you throughout the season. And then from that point, once they're on the roster, you get their availability and you check it every week. And it's their job to respond to you. And you let them know, yeah, this might seem like overkill, but here's the thing: as a snow company, no companies don't know what I'm about to say, but you are responsible and liable for servicing that property for a customer. Therefore, you're responsible and liable for making sure those people are there. So if they say things like, "Oh, I have another job. I don't have time to respond to this," or this is overkill. Sorry, I was busy. It's like, look, I understand. I know you're busy. I know this isn't top priority to you, but it is top priority to me. And so for you to work with me, I do need you to be more responsive. And you'll find out if that's too much for people, they're probably not the right fit, or maybe they're a backup. I'm not saying you shun them, but I'm saying keep looking until you find a full starting crew with some backups that do respond to you consistently. And then obviously, as you get closer to storm, I'm not going to go through a whole storm game plan, but have a process where you check the weather, and you give them a check in, 72 hours out, 48, kind of give them a preview and tell them when you'll be making the call. And then tell them when you'll be checking in mid storm to see how they're doing. Tell them, do you have backups, or is this one they might have to go longer on? Let them know that beforehand. And then also, I suggest mid season and postseason feedback surveys to really hear from them what's going well and what's not. And if you can do those, surveys are good. If you can do interviews, even better. If you have someone in your office to own that, that really helps. But those consistent touch bases are really what makes a difference. And have somebody own that. Another thing to have somebody own to help with that is have all your sites laid out and who you have for them, what their availability is. And I suggest weekly as a team for snow, you go through that like your game plan. And you say, if a storm hit today, where are we well covered? Where are we probably needing to could get by, but maybe a big storm would kill us? Or where are we like we're screwed if we don't do something right now? And stay on top of that. So again, is that going to is that going to solve all your hiring challenges? No. Is that going to solve some of them? Yeah, absolutely. So that's a couple things I would say. A couple things I wanted to talk about is, more feedback I got from different sources was biggest pain in hiring is finding dependable people. When you have people drop, it didn't snow for 3 days, so they went and found a job. That's reality. The reality is a lot of people are focused on the money of today. So the reality to embrace as a snow company is, ABH, always be hiring. So throughout the winter, you always want to be hiring. Even if you're, quote, fully staffed, I would still have ads up, even if you don't put any or as much, paid revenue behind them. Another thing I suggest is always be reaching out to passive candidates. And if you're not familiar with what passive candidates are, it's people who are not actively looking for a job, but may apply if they're approached. So a couple ways you can do this in snow and landscape. Number one is Indeed has what's called Smart Source. So it's a paid subscription per month. You get so many outreaches. You can actually search for heavy equipment operator in your area and reach out. You can actually filter by how recently people have updated a resume on there. So you can reach out to say people that have updated, maybe start the last week and then go back to the last couple months. Because the odds are if they've updated more recently, they've been on there, and that means they might actively be looking. So they might actively be open to talking to you. You can send a short template message and then, get some contacts. I've got some good people off there. And it's really helpful for building a pool. And it doesn't just work for seasonal jobs, it works for any job. So Indeed's one of the biggest, if not the biggest job site out there. LinkedIn has similar options for Recruiter. I would recommend Recruiter Lite. Really, Recruiter probably not as much for small businesses unless you're doing a lot of hiring. LinkedIn, I'd say, is better for professional positions. I haven't found as much seasonal work there, but throwing that out there as a source. Another thing to look for, and again, one thing you can use in an AI era is use things like ChatGPT. Put in, hey, I need a bunch of snow shovelers. These are part time, working in the cold. Where are some organizations I can get some? I did that. I had it give me a list of probably about 8 different things. I can't remember all of it, but some of the things to look at is like halfway or recovery houses. And why those can be good is if you form a relationship there with the person who's the head of the program. A lot of times those are, men and women who are trying to get back on their feet after, addiction, homelessness, and trying to put their lives back together. So they might be open to those kind of opportunities. And then plus you have a built-in crew leader if somebody from the organization is willing to go with them. So you kind of almost have a built-in sidewalk crew leader. Same type of model. Think about sports teams, high school or college. Obviously, be aware of employment laws with high school when you're having, 16, 17-year-olds there. Make sure you're in line with your laws. College fraternities, college organizations, service organizations, things like ROTC. And these are not things like, here's the thing with these are also long term relationship builds. These aren't something you're not going to call your local ROTC at a high school or college or, locally and say, hey, I need snow people for the storm tomorrow. If you're doing that, you're way behind the 8 ball and they're probably not going to do anything for you. Those are things that you have to cultivate those relationships early, introduce yourself, share what challenges you have, and say, hey, is there a win-win here? Is there a win where we could provide this working opportunity for your students? And if you think about it with high school and college students, if you can do that, that also exposes them to the trade, it exposes them to the industry, and it opens their eyes to, oh, this is something I could do with my career. And you can build relationships there too. So don't just think in the term of finding short term labor, but also, again, think long term with that too. So that's what I would say with, hiring. Another unique idea is reach out to your local laborers or heavy equipment operator union and ask if they'd be willing to, enter into a letter of agreement where they would provide you their out of work list for the winters. If they have heavy equipment operators that say do more outdoor dirt work and are laid off in the winter, they provide you those names. In exchange, you agree that you'll pay, whatever certain rate they want to agree with for you. You pay a little bit into their benefits. That's what I did at a company I worked with. And in addition, you also, have kind of a non-compete with that. Like, we're not going to try to poach them from you. Spoiler alert, you're probably not going to outpay what they're making with the union anyway, and you're not going to outpace their benefits. So it's probably not a worry, but that can help supplement your seasonal workforce. Another thing, relationship building, show up at things like county fairs, have a booth. And I know a company that does this, have a booth, not like by the drinks and everything, but get it back by where the equipment all comes in, where the 4-H kids and the farm kids come in, set up, have your employees come by. And also to appreciate your employees, have, beginning and end of season get-togethers. And, a big thing for passive candidates, if you don't have a referral program, definitely put one in place because your best operators know the best operators and are willing to refer them. So if you're treating people well, that's going to be more likely that you're going to get more people. And by any means, is this easy? No, it's not. It is an effort, it is a grind, but it's worth it if you do it right. But definitely, I would say the takeaways to kind of ease some of your hiring pains is number one, have that process where you're touching base from phone interview all the way through in person interview, onboarding training, and then checking availability throughout the season. Along with that, have somebody on your team owning that so you always know where your needs are. That would be number one. Number two, definitely make sure you reach out to passive candidates. So this is the too long didn't read. Reach out to those, your chamber of commerce. Reach out to, on Indeed. Put out, Facebook ads are good too. Those aren't necessarily passive. Reach out to different, halfway houses, high school sports teams, college organizations, to get people. Reach out to other companies that don't do snow and ask what they do with their people in the winter, or they just laid off. Is there a potential for a partnership there? So reach out, build those long-term relationships, and then also build long-term relationships with, schools, training programs. Heavy equipment operator schools is a great place to build relationships with. And, along with that, be willing to provide some off-season training. If you can't find the best people, the next best thing is to make the best people. And you can make the best people by training them yourself. So I hope this gave a little bit. Again, these were just some feedback I got through posting. I hope, you found some takeaways from that. So, I want to encourage you is with everything you do, try one new thing, measure it, and then keep what's working and build off what's not. And the last thing I'll leave you with as a tip for hiring is always track applicant source. So where did that applicant come from? Did they apply off your website? Did they see it on Indeed? Did you reach out to them as a passive candidate? Did they come from a referral? And then measure all the way through to, how many candidates did you hire and where did they come from? More importantly, how many people worked? Even more importantly, rate those candidates. Have somebody, work with your field team to rate each of the operators and the seasonal staff and say, out of our A operators, what source did they come from? Because when you know that information, then you know where to put your money and efforts. Like, for example, where I worked, a lot of ours came from referrals. So I said, hey, we need to beef up our referral program. We need to have maybe tiers that if you refer so many or if they work so many events, that they get even more to encourage that. And we also need to have employee events where we meet those people and make them feel like part of the team. But again, if you don't know, you can't act. But if you do know, feedback's like playing the game with a cheat code. So this is Evan Tashwar. This has been NetGain Networking Encouragement Training, talking hiring in the snow landscape and facility service industries. But again, we help snow, landscape, and all small businesses hire, train, retain, and engage the best teams so you can build that win-win workplace. We out.
With the weather, but you ain't gon' slip and fall with that. Why? Cause we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King need this salting round. Clown brokers, end of the road. This a cul-de-sac. Blackout with white glove service. That's the coldest facts. Sparks flying from the start. It's a Goldberg match. Wild with the snow clouds running. We be on a mission. How we put the